Okay, we're probably good to go. Thanks, everybody. December lab advisory meeting. Um, Not a ton on the docket today. We're gonna start up top. Derek Julian from the DHHS is gonna give us some updates on the avian influenza, what's going on out there. And Derek, do you have slides?
Hey, yes, I do. Just have a couple slides.
Okay.
So,
Here. You should be able to share your screen now.
yep, looks like I can. All right. Why can't I find? I'm going to do this way. I think this will work just fine. Okay, one second. All right, do you see the slides now?
Yep, do.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Ben. So, hello, everyone. Like Ben stated, we just wanted to kind of give a little situational update on the latest happenings of highly pathogenic avian influenza, both nationally and here in Nebraska. Um, so, starting as a kind of a bird's eye view across the country, poultry flock detections of high path avian flu have been on the rise. On the right side of this screen, this might look familiar. It's USDA HPAI dashboard showing positive flock detections both in commercial flocks and backyard poultry flocks. So this is specific to the last 30 days. As you can see, there's a lot more green than there is white. So most or well over half of the states currently in the past 30 days have had at least one detection specifically over the past 30 days. Excuse me. There has been 95 confirmed flock detections. 56 of those 95 have been backyard flocks, with other 39 being commercial flocks. More specifically in Nebraska, we did recently have a backyard flock detection out in Keith County on the 21st of November. We were able to work with our local health department to identify persons who are considered at risk of being exposed to those sick and dying birds, and we're able to successfully symptom monitor them for 10 days past their exposure. And thankfully, no one developed symptoms who we identified as being exposed. So that was good there. So not only just poultry flock detector having detections of high path avian flu, wild birds to no real surprise or increase in their detections. In Nebraska specifically, we've had 3 wild bird detections reported in the past 30 days. And that data too is, although not pictured on this slide, but available on USDA's high path avian flu website. And I can post some links to those if anyone's curious and wants to dig around in those after my presentation. Finally, on the dairy front, there are still some sporadic detections in dairies occurring. When I checked that dashboard last Friday, there was just one detection in the past 30 days, and that was out in California. So I just wanted to also share kind of our main goals for public health when we have these detections and what we really want to try to set out and accomplish. So listed 4 here that I thought of. So we want to identify those potentially exposed persons and be able to monitor those persons for 10 days after the last day of exposure. We also want to be able to offer them Tamiflu to anyone exposed, regardless of their symptom status, as that's CDC's recommendation there. And then, of course, if anyone were to develop symptoms, we want to help uh, coordinate testing and treatment for those folks. All right, so that's for that. Also, wanted to give just a one slide overview of what I'm sure a lot of you have heard out of Washington State. There was a human detection of H5N5, and that was actually the first human detection, I believe, ever globally for avian influenza A H5N5. So this was first reported over last month in November. And then I kind of detailed as best I could from pulling out of various resources a rough timeline describing the kind of how this detection occurred and what the response was like. So this patient was described as an older adult with it sounded like a few underlying health conditions. It was noted that their symptoms first occurred during the week ending October 25th, so roughly end of October. Some of the symptoms that were mentioned that they had included a high fever, confusion, difficulty breathing, and roughly 2 weeks later, for week ending the 8th of November, the patient was hospitalized and was noted as being quote unquote severely ill. So, a few short days later after hospitalization, H5 was first detected, actually on the 13th to be exact. Just here recently, and it's actually the first link at the bottom of the slide. WHO released some additional information kind of describing this patient and included some information on how testing kind of went. So that first presumptive positive of H5 actually occurred at the University of Washington's medicine clinical virology lab. And then it was subsequently sent to Washington State's public health lab and was able to confirm the AH5 using CDC's influenza H5 assay. And then once it was positive at the public health lab, it was sent on to CDC for further sequencing, and that's when the H5N5 specifically was identified. So roughly a week after the initial presumptive positive. And then the clade, the HA clade specifically was the 2.3.4.4b, which has been the most common clade since we've been seeing these detections. A little more specifically, the this patient was actually first swabbed for an MP swab for PCR prior to their admission and was actually influenza negative, and then they returned home. Unfortunately for that patient, they symptoms worsened, so they sought care again, and that was at the point when they were hospitalized. And then, of course, a few days later, would end up having that presumptive positive. And that presumptive positive was actually done on a bronch wash, and then the further subtyping identified the H5. And then here, I think it was just announced a week or so ago, the patient unfortunately did pass away on the 21st. So a lot of stuff happening with this response in basically the course of 1 month. It was also said that this patient specifically had a mixed backyard flock of domestic poultry at their house, and that it was noted wild birds tend to be around their backyard flock. Little unclear based on information that's out right now if they think it was the wild birds or poultry specifically that had the avian flu virus, but pretty likely that's where their source of exposure was. And then just a couple links that I pulled a lot of this information out of. Wanted to include those here just for reference in case anyone wants to read a little more into it. So that is that. I did throw in one additional slide, more off topic of high path avian flu, but has made the news quite a bit. So I thought maybe it'd be appropriate just to do a quick slide and talk about influenza A H3N2 subclade K. So the subclade K recently made headlines within the past month. It was detected overseas, notably in Japan and the UK, and now has been found here in the United States. And it made headlines because it was a mismatched strain compared to the H3N2 strain that was included in the influenza vaccines. So there is some concern, of course, that maybe the vaccines wouldn't have super great efficacy against influenza A H3. Um, Before I get into that a little bit more, one thing I think it's important to note that this change in the H3N2 subclade K was due to an antigenic drift and not a shift. So when we think of shift versus drift, basically shift is a big change in the influenza virus that involves the swap of genetic material between two different flu viruses. Drift, which is what we have occurred here at subclade K, is just a smaller change within the same influenza virus. So there has been some studies that have come out specifically of the UK looking at vaccine efficacy. Thankfully, the current flu vaccine, although it could have some reduced efficacy, still has pretty solid efficacy, specifically at preventing hospitalizations in children aged 2 to 17. A UK study found effectiveness still at roughly 70 to 75%, and in adults, roughly 30 to 40%. Now, CDC does have some data on the number of characterized flu A H3N2 viruses, and at least through week ending the 29th of November, roughly 87% of those H3N2s have been identified as subclade K. And this included another link here at the bottom that kind of summarizes a little more information about the subclade K. So with that, that is all the slides I have, and happy to take any questions. I'll try to stop sharing if I can figure it out.
I can.
There we go. Got it. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for Derek? Okay. Thanks a lot, Derek, for giving us
Yep.
that update.
Thanks.
So then, sorry, I'm figuring out my own screen. So then the only thing for laboratory topics I had to talk about was I do believe it was Thursday, the CDC released a alert that there's been a outbreak of Marburg virus disease in Ethiopia. And then so that information was then further shared by our DHHS. So as of December 3rd, there's 13 laboratory confirmed cases. They're working to identify more and kind of contain that outbreak. So they say that the risk to the United States is low, but the odds are never zero. So once again, take this as an opportunity to look at your high consequence pathogen procedures, maybe some risk assessments. And if you ever need or want help, maybe doing a risk assessment or something, we have resources available here at NPHL, and we have some really knowledgeable people just right down the hall from us. So always available. And so that's all I had for our lab topics, and we'll just go into our round robin. Starting up top there with the hospital-acquired illness and antimicrobial resistance team updates. Got Lacey or Claire or Dr. Ashraf.
Yeah, so currently we are working on the containment of a CPCRE cluster. I think I have talked about it before in these meetings in the past. Um, uh, um, I think the update on that is we think that we have a good handle on that now, and we have started to see decline in the new cases for CPCRE. So I think the containment efforts that we did for that CPCRE cluster that was linked to an environmental source appears to be going down. The numbers appears to be going down. So I think we were good there. Uh, C. auris outbreak that I've talked about in the past. We have this year, we have three different clades of C. auris clusters we have seen. We have two cases of clade 3. We have many cases of clade 1 this year. And, again, several cases of clade 4 also this year. Clade 1 and clade 3, there is no transmission now. I think we have called those outbreaks over. So those two clusters have been well contained, and we have not seen any new cases in the last few months now. On those, clade 4 was the most recent cluster that we have identified for CRS, and for that cluster, we we had we had a case within the last few weeks. There was one case in the last few weeks, but there is a possibility that that case was just a delayed diagnosis from the original time that cases were exposed. So the ongoing transmission, even for clade 4 cluster, is probably done, but there are still some testing left on that cluster before we call that contained or over. So again, keep an eye on any isolate that may be suspicious for Candida auris. If your labs cannot identify that, send that sample to NPHL for identification, especially from sterile site samples, so that that can be identified at the species level. And then finally, I think we're also looking at a couple of group A strep clusters in healthcare facilities right now. So that's also something that we are working on. So that's pretty much from our side. Claire and Lacey, did I miss anything?
I think you got it.
Great. Great. Thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Ashraf? And again, yeah, if you have questions about identifying Candida auris, Candida zyma auris, you can reach out to us. So next up, we've got respiratory illness. Derek, if you have more to add.
Yeah, I'm back,
Great.
so we'll do a little more respiratory talk here. Just a quick little update on what we're seeing lately with respiratory activity here in Nebraska. With influenza, we have been seeing some increases here over the past 2 to 3 weeks. Looking at some preliminary data for week ending the 6th of December, which will go out in our reports at the end of this week, but thought I'd just share that while on the call with you guys. Looks like our positivity is going to be roughly 3.3%. So that's an increase of about 0.5%. And that's roughly the week-to-week increases we've been seeing over the past 2 to 3 weeks. So overall, would still consider flu activity low, but definitely increasing, specifically in our age groups of 5 to 24 years of age. That's where we've been seeing most of our increases, just looking at our laboratory demographic data. And that's also been what's been being reported nationally too, seeing most of the increases right now being driven by our younger age groups at this time. Of the flu viruses influenza A viruses, I should say, that we have subtyped so far, we have mostly seen influenza AH3s. For week ending the 29th of November, we've had 34 subtypes here in Nebraska, and 25 of those 34 have been H3s, with the other 9 being influenza A, H1N1. So with that, RSV, we're starting to see little bits of increases as well. For this past week, preliminary data for week ending the 6th saw about a 1% jump to roughly 2% positivity. So again, low, but showing signs of increasing. And finally, with SARS-CoV-2, activity is not doing a whole lot, seeing kind of very minimal increases of a few tenths of a percent when I'm referring to test positivity. So primarily influenza and RSV, we're seeing those increases and would expect activity to continue to move in that upward direction, especially with being in the midst of holiday season. So finally, one other thing I wanted to mention, if you hadn't seen, 2 weeks ago, we released our annual start of respiratory season HON. So nothing too new in that HON in terms of recommendations. Still includes information on how to submit specimens to NPHL, and also highlighting our recommendation of, if there's folks hospitalized with influenza A, we'd really like those specimens to be subtyped, whether locally, if that's feasible. If not, definitely we can do it at NPHL. So with that, I'll take any questions, and I'll post a link to the HON as well in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions over flu or respiratory? season. Okay, we'll move on to enteric outbreaks.
Yes. So not much updates from Enterix today, but overall Enterix is being a little slow. We are starting to see norovirus pick up, but compared to previous years, we're seeing a kind of a slower start to the season. We are seeing outbreaks of norovirus start to pick up in childcare, long-term care facilities. This is similar to what's happening nationwide with norovirus right now. It seems to be a lower numbers this year compared to last year at this time. Just a reminder, outbreak specimens of norovirus, so like the local health department reaches out or we reach out, outbreak specimens of norovirus should be sent to NPHL. That is the only update I have today.
Thank you, Sandra. Any questions for Sandra? Okay, so then we'll go on to vector-borne disease with Jeff Hammock.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Not much to really discuss here. Just a couple of things I kind of wanted to point out as we're kind of coming to the end of the year here, and our vector season's kind of coming to an end as well. A couple of things that just noticed this year is we had our highest number of cases of ehrlichiosis that we've ever reported this year, with 20 cases. And that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but prior to 2022, our highest number of cases ever was 9. But since then, since 2022, we've had double digits ever since, with culminating in this year's high number. With tularemia, we saw another very high year. Last year was our highest year ever. This year, we tied for our second highest year with 24 cases. So it's very interesting to see that we've had 2 very high years like that back to back. Last year was a little bit of an anomaly where it seemed more like it was environmental due to something in the environment. We saw a lot of cases of inhalation type tularemia. This year was kind of more along the lines of what we typically expect, with more tick-borne related cases. And we certainly saw an outbreak in the southwest part of the state early on. Did some tick surveillance down there, and we definitely saw a high percentage of ticks positive for Francisella down that way. Additionally, the last thing, kind of going back to mosquito-borne disease here, is malaria. We've seen an increasing number of malaria cases each year since post-pandemic, especially starting in 2022. This year, I believe, is our 3rd most cases we've ever reported, with 15. Last year was our most cases since like the 1940s, when individuals were returning back from World War II, and theaters from other areas of the world. And so, again, this is something that isn't just being seen here by us. Now, all these cases are travel related, but we're seeing increased numbers of malaria cases here in the U.S. from travelers returning from areas that are endemic. So it's not just Nebraska that's seeing this; it's something we're seeing nationwide. So just kind of something to kind of keep in mind for folks here. Especially if you have people returning from travel, something to kind of keep in mind, especially if they're coming from malaria endemic regions. But I think that's kind of the highlights.
Thank you very much. Interesting. Any questions for Jeff? Okay, I see Kristen's ready to go for the TB.
Hi, thank you. I do not have any TB updates today.
No updates for TB. Okay, thanks, Kristen. And how about for the STD program? Anyone on for the STD program? No updates there. And then we'll finish out with lead testing.
Hello. No updates from lead either. Thanks.
Updates for lead. Okay. So that concludes the DHHS section updates. A couple of words on some of our trainings. The Gram Stain Challenge. I have everyone's responses. We actually had a conference in town last week for other laboratory trainers. So that took up a lot of my time last week. So I'm going to get those results kind of packaged together and sent out before the end of the week. And then packaging and shipping for this Friday's class, registration's closed. The next one is now on March 26th, and that one's open for registration. If you have somebody who's going to need their recertification done. And that's it. We'll open it up if, open mic if anyone has any news or notes, or we have any new employees to announce. Hearing none. That will do it for the State Lab Advisory Meeting for December. We'll see you January 12th. Have happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.